Hello, this is Jeremiah Harrison and Michaela Harrison from Liturgy the Home, coming to you from our home again. This time today's Friday, July the 2nd. Usually we make these on Saturday. You're going to be seeing this probably on Saturday, but we have a wedding to go to tomorrow, so we're making this a little early. But we're going to go over the imagery and the saints of the upcoming week, and each of these videos for a little while is going to be a little different. We're testing out different ways of doing this. But so I wanted to, before we get started, I wanted to make a quick announcement. Many of you probably already know if you're on our email list, but we have secured a publisher. Thanks be to God. So Sophia Institute Press has agreed to publish our calendars, and I'm really hoping this will be the beginning of hopefully what can be many different things that they can help us get published and distributed. So anyway, say a prayer for us for that and
Yes.
Thanksgiving. And I think we'll just begin. We'll just go right into it. Here, I'll bring you. So first, beginning with Sunday. Beginning with this coming Sunday, the 6th Sunday after Pentecost. I'm going to read from the Gospel, and then you had some thoughts you wanted to share.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Right? So on this Sunday, and you can see here with this image, the Gospel comes from Mark. And it says, "At that time, when there was a great multitude with Jesus, and had nothing to eat, calling his disciples together, he saith to them, I have compassion on the multitude, for behold, they have now been with me 3 days, and have nothing to eat. And if I shall send them away fasting to their home, they will faint in the way, for some of them came from afar off. And his disciples answered him, From whence can anyone fill them here with bread in the wilderness? And he asked them, How many loaves have ye? Who said, 7. And he commanded the people to sit down on the ground. And taking the 7 loaves, giving thanks, he broke and gave to his disciples to set before the people. And they had a few little fishes, and he blessed them, and commanded them to be set before them. And they did eat and were filled. And they took up that which was left of the fragments, 7 baskets. And they that had eaten were about 4,000, and he sent them away."
Oh, actually, before you. Well, both pictures I had a little commentary on, but anyway.
Well, yeah,
Go back. So
Go
this is the feeding of the 5,000. This is by an artist. His last name is Tissot. I really like his art style a lot, and I thought this was a really unique composition of showing all the people like in this landscape image. I thought the children would like it. So part of the reason why we read the gospel, I was asking my sister-in-law if she had any advice, and she said she thought for her children hearing the gospel, hearing it multiple times can be really helpful. So we tried today, and let us know if reading the gospel is helpful in these videos, and then a few of the pictures that the children can look at. So this one. And then here's another one where you have the crowd in the background, and there's Christ in the center. Very different art style, but still like a really beautiful composition. There's the little boy with the loaves and the fishes, and all the apostles are like, what do we do? Their hands up. So anyway, I thought these two might be useful.
Yeah, what do we do? And the Lord acts.
And one thing that in one of the commentaries I was reading on this gospel is that Christ, well, the manna is obviously prefiguring the Eucharist, but that Christ has such a heart to sustain us, and he knows that we'll faint in the way without his help. And so this is a beautiful example of Christ giving that strength. And we're going to be going through some martyrs that went through some pretty tough things, and you wonder, how did they do that? Well, Christ gives the graces and sustains them, and we believe that he'll sustain us through whatever we need, and that takes a great faith. So anyway, little quick commentary.
Yeah, that's right. So proceeding into the week.
Yep.
After looking at for Sunday, we have here on July the 5th Saint Anthony Mary Zaccaria, and I did a little reading on him. This is a fascinating saint. This Anthony was called to be the father of one of those religious families which arose in such numbers during the 16th century to repair the ruins of the house of God. That's what Dom Guéranger's commentary begins with. And what struck me about that says, the same was said of St. Francis St. Francis of Assisi. Remember, God called him to rebuild his church.
Yes.
And at first he thought it was, rebuilding the church near him, but it wasn't until later he realized he was called to rebuild the church, the house of God, which is in ruins. And it just, one of the things that struck me about that is, multiple times throughout history, the house of God has been in ruins, and God has called certain persons. Mm-hmm. And I think, well, my goodness, what sort of a day are we in now? And who among us can help rebuild? Who will God call and give strength to rebuild? So he was born of a noble family in Lombardy, Italy, and then even in childhood. So he's one of those saints who was drawn to sanctity early on in life. He laid the foundations for 3 different religious orders, for 3 different congregations. One for men, one for women, and the men were the Barnabites, and the women were I think the little angels. No, it was the angelic sisters, I believe. And then numerous confraternities for married men. And I wanted to actually dig into that more. I didn't this time, but just thinking, being a married man myself, how the nature of confraternities, what sorts of, we families need ways to band together in a religious sense. I mean, we're doing it around parishes, around monasteries, around the fraternity, but there's something there. There's something there to really be explored. And to him, it was actually credited the creation of he's the one who started the 40 hours devotion leading up to Ash Wednesday before Lent. So that's a little bit on St. Anthony, Marie, Zaccaria.
This is the angelic virgins, was what they were called.
The angelic virgins. Yep. And here's this is another St. Anthony.
Yes.
So.
Pointing to the Eucharist.
Oh, and did we didn't grab our coloring pages this time,
I know,
did we?
I forgot.
Well, we do have, for all of you who are members, look in your members area. We've crafted black and white line images, coloring pages of each of the saints. They're not in this slideshow now. They usually will be, but so. And then another one. This is the really good one right here.
Beautiful.
So they realized that this is in the 16th century. He was a contemporary of Martin Luther. So while you have the Reformation really breaking up the church, he's one of the members of the Counter-Reformation, calling those, at least in his province in Italy, back to Christ. Back to Christ. Our next, we have on July the 7th, Saints Cyril and Methodius. And these are 2 really neat saints. They were saints these saints are revered in the Orthodox as well as the Catholic world. It's funny, in the Orthodox world, they're given a title equal to apostles, because they're most well known for taking and making a language, crafting an alphabet and a language for the Slavs, for the Slavonic peoples. And it was originally, when they first made it, it's known as Old Church Slavonic, and eventually it turned into the Cyrillic alphabet. It was disciples of these 2 men that finalized it into the Cyrillic alphabet that is used in Russia and in all of the Eastern European countries today. But it's interesting. They were attacked by enemies within the church for this work of because part of the work they did was bring the liturgy into Slavonic, and there was a tug of war back and forth about how that should be handled. Should it be just in Latin or in the native people of the Slavs? And it's after, so Cyril died at a young age, and Methodius stayed on for many years longer and did much work in what was Moravia, which is in modern day the Czech Republic. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that after Methodius' death, they cracked down and they actually exiled all of his disciples out of Moravia. And it was a diaspora where they spread to all the Eastern European countries around. And basically that's how Christianity was spread even more powerfully to Eastern Europe, was the dispersal of their disciples. So I thought that was very interesting for St. Cyril and Methodius. So these 2 saints are revered very much in the East. There are big feast days in many Eastern European countries celebrating these two saints. And I wish if you remember, you gotta look up the coloring page image, which was made based off the statue. These 2 statues that are in, I don't know which Eastern European country. I couldn't, because I can't read the inscription, but these were manly men. These were manly men, and just we need to see that example these days. I think, yeah.
Especially for the boys, something to want to emulate and be like.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to pull that image in here.
Next, on the July the 8th, Michaela's going to tell us a little bit about St. Elizabeth, Queen of Portugal.
Yes, a lot of people mix her up with St. Elizabeth of Hungary, and understandably so, because they look very similar. And in fact, Elizabeth of Hungary was the aunt of St. Elizabeth of Portugal.
Oh.
And so St. Elizabeth of Hungary is oftentimes shown with the roses in her mantle because of the miracle of the roses, where she was carrying bread to the poor, and she was kind of caught by surprise by the king, who was asking what she was carrying, and when she showed what was in her mantle, the bread had turned into roses. So when we were looking for images for Saint Elizabeth of Portugal, we kept seeing very similar imagery with Saint Elizabeth of Portugal with the roses, and we're like, well, wait, which saint is that? Well, as it turns out, both saints have the same miracle attributed to them. And
Do
there's
you have
actually
one of those rose pictures here?
Of which ones?
One of the rose pictures?
Yes, I believe. Yes. Okay. Yeah, go on. Okay, this one she's giving food to the poor, but then go to the next one. So this is when, because later in life she actually she wore the habit. She became a third order Franciscan. So here you see her with the roses in her mantle, just to kind of show that attribute. And you see the crown down below.
She's taking off the crown at this time.
Exactly. The coloring page that we have for this saint looks very similar to the composition of St. Elizabeth of Hungary, where she's in her queenly garb. But one of the, go back to the first.
Yeah, tell me
story.
about this. This is
her husband and her son, her grown son, there was a lot of contention in the family, and there was actually there was a number of wars or like battles that were fought. And I think this one is more towards the end of her life, where there was she heard that there was going to be this battle between her family members, and so she rode along.
And their armies.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, you see the armies there. And so she came a long way to try to make peace. This was one of her chief roles, was to play peacemaker in her family, and she was so virtuous that it was hard to refuse her, and she brought peace multiple times. But this last time, she was just she was getting older, and the journey was hard. But she came as soon as she heard that was about to happen, and as soon as her family members heard that she was coming, they immediately stopped, even before she arrived. But the journey there took its toll on her, and she died as a result of that.
Oh, wow.
So, anyway, that's mostly all I have
Peacemaker,
about her.
Peacemaker in Portugal.
There she is.
Well, we'll go on next to the next saints we have on July the 10th. We have the 7 brothers, martyrs, and Saints Rufina and Secunda, virgins and martyrs. And this is a story. These are, I think all of these are early Christian saints, so during the time of the Roman persecutions. And I believe in the liturgy, the readings come from in the epistle, the book of Maccabees, right? Because there's a parallel story in the Old Testament of a woman and her 7 sons who are put to death rather than deny God. But under the persecution of Marcus Aurelius, the 7 sons of Saint Felicitas they tried to compel them to renounce Christ, but they refused. And they trusted in Christ, and they stood against all threats. And they were even encouraged by their mother as they faced death. And each one of them was put to death in various ways. Januarius was scourged by leaded whips, and Felix and Philip were beaten with clubs. Silvanus was thrown headlong from a great height, and Alexander, Vitalis, and Martial were each beheaded. But each of them went to their deaths boldly. And we've been conditioned to be so afraid of death, especially with COVID and all these things about us. But the reason why these saints are brought to us is because we're really not to be afraid of death. Each of these young men went to their deaths, but really, if you were there and you had spiritual eyes to see, I think you would see angels come down and pluck their souls up and take them up to Christ, where they are all now. Even now, we can ask for their intercession. They are with Christ in heaven. and their bodies, or the remains of their bodies, are still here on this earth awaiting the resurrection. You can almost imagine them sleeping, awaiting for the resurrection when all will rise again. And I believe the church brings to us these martyrs over and over again because she does not want us to be afraid. Christ does not want us to be afraid of death. And that's very important to instill in our kids. And then the story of Saint...
There's one more image. This one.
This one.
This is not an image directly of the 7 brothers, but this is an image of martyrs in the burial of martyrs in the catacombs. And I thought for the children especially, they see so many pictures of like when the martyrdom's happening, but this is an image of after the martyrdom and the reverence that the church is paying to these heroes. They're like in the same way that we honor fallen heroes in soldiers. These are fallen Catholic heroes, and look at the reverence in this image. You have the priests there and the servers, and just there's like a peacefulness about this picture because they're going to their rest and waiting for the final resurrection.
They're going to their repose. They will simply they will wait. It's like you could. They're waiting. That's another thing we don't know how to do in our day anymore. So how to wait just like quietly. Imagine them waiting for like 1,000 years quietly, but then on the last day all will rise again.
It's hard for kids to wait, especially.
Yeah.
But look how peaceful. Like it's a beautiful picture. I thought that might be helpful.
There were a few other pictures I was kind of moving through. This is actually from the Maccabees. This is from the account of the woman and her 7 sons that were put to death rather than renounce God. So, and then the second half, the other martyrs that we remember this day are Saints
Rufina
and Secunda. And these two, so each of them they're sisters, and they were betrothed by their parents, but they refused to marry when the time came because they had consecrated their virginity to Jesus Christ. And they were arrested under the emperors Valerian and Gallienus, and the prefect that was in charge, he saw that he could not shake their resolution. So he had them, the judge there, had Rufina ordered to be beaten with rods. It was interesting because Secunda then said to the judge, "Why do you treat my sister thus honorably, but me dishonorably? Order us both to be scourged, since we both confess Christ to be God." And the judge was enraged by this, and he ordered both of them to be thrown in a dungeon that stank horribly, that was fetid. And immediately a sweet odor and a light filled the place. And so then they took him out, and they took him to one of the Roman bathhouses and locked him in, and they fired up the fire into the floor until it was red hot, but then they emerged unhurt. And then they took and tied stones about them and threw them into the Tiber River, but an angel saved them and plucked them out of the water. And finally they were taken 10 miles outside of the city and beheaded. And a holy woman, a matron, gathered their bodies, buried them on her estate. But afterwards their remains were translated to Rome, where it is said they now repose, waiting the resurrection in the Basilica of Constantine near the baptistry.
Wow.
So, most of us will never have to face martyrdom, but boy, if we could face death like that.
I don't think we'd be afraid of anything.
I think that's the point, if we really trust Christ, right?
Yeah.
So that's all we have for this.
That's why we pray to them to help us,
yes,
right?
Yes.
We're still
help
hopefully
us.
Saints in the making.
I mean, there's crosses of all sizes, right? And they look down from heaven, and we can ask their intercession to help us, even with our meager crosses, right? To become more virtuous, to become more, to have more bravery, right? Yes. Well, I think that brings us to the end for this week. May God bless you all, and we will see you soon.